Welcome to the Herpcore History podcast, presented to you by Little Shop of Horrors. Feel free to reach out to us on any of our social media platforms for any of your feeder needs. All right, let's go ahead and get into this episode. All right, tonight I am joined by Mr. Eric Burke, one of the godfather of herpetoculture podcasts and getting it going. You picked up. So what got you into reptiles in the beginning?
In the beginning, wow. Yeah, well, my dad was kind of always into animals when I was growing up. So he was always into keeping weird pets. I think he got me in a knoll when I was like 5. I had that for a while. And then I was about 10 years old and I got the best snake you could get as a kid, a Burmese python. But that was the 80s and it was a different time. But yeah, I got that. I was fascinated by that thing. I watched it hatch out of the egg at if this is history, Martin's Aquarium. People will know that as Hank Molt and all that from the early days of the Lizard King and all. That was sort of in the backdrop of Martin's Aquarium that took place in Jenkintown, right outside Philadelphia. And was there. And I went crazy for a while, probably up until I was about 16, 15. Then I discovered the guitar. I got out of snakes until I was about maybe 29. So pretty much all through my teens and 20s, I didn't have any snakes. I got a house when I was about 30. It's kind of the story of everybody that I hear, that I talk to. And I went out, and of course, Burmese pythons were sort of my first love. And I don't know what it was about those snakes. I was just fascinated by them. So I went out and bought a whole bunch of Burmese pythons. And for a while, I was going to breed them, and I had all the different morphs. I think I had about 15 Burmese pythons. And as fate would have it, I got divorced, and I had to move snakes out, which you can imagine that moving snakes that size was kind of tricky. So I had left some at my old house while I was moving around. At the time, I started to delve into, whatever you want to call it, like the starter pack of reptiles, if you were, just a Noah's Ark of different things. And I found out that I really love pythons. I started getting into other types of pythons. It was one of those reptile magazines that come out yearly, and it had an article on carpet pythons, and jungle carpets were in there, and it kind of popped out to me. And I went pet shop. I saw them at a pet shop. I didn't know anything about anything that I would say how to buy a carpet python today. But I did purchase 2 of them, thinking that they were a pair. Long story short, when I got the divorce, what had happened is I had all these different type of pythons. I had African rocks. I think I had Burmese pythons. I had ball pythons. I think I had Angolan pythons. I think I may have had a white lip or something like that. And I had these carpets. So I moved them all to my dad's house, mom and dad's house, and kept them in their basement. And back then there wasn't all this technology with lights and all this stuff. So I did my best to keep them warm. The craziest thing was that the carpet pythons were fine all throughout the winter, shed fine. They didn't lose any weight. They were perfect. Every other snake I had got a respiratory infection, got sick. And, it was just a hot mess. And then I decided at that point, I really like these carpet pythons, and history was made from there.
Excellent. And so kind of going back, so this is something I think I've heard you talk about before, that your dad had an interest in reptiles. And was he keeping stuff early on in your childhood?
Oh yeah. We had quite the zoo. Yeah, he was big time into a lot of venomous. He had Eastern diamondbacks, Western diamondbacks, copperheads. I think he bred copperheads at one point. We had Indian pythons, which, oh man, I wish I still had those.
Very cool snake.
Yeah. And they were legit because that was back in the 80s,
Yeah.
And what else did he have? he had various lizards. He had some tree vipers. He had sidewinders. Um, man, he had mangrove snakes. Just a crazy
So
amount of
quite an
it. Yeah,
eclectic, quite a bit of kind of range of animals early on there.
yeah,
So you kind of growing up, you were kind of doomed from the beginning,
pretty
and you
much.
and you caught the bug, right? I feel like with that, right, it's like kids playing football or anything else. If your parents are really into it, there's a chance that you're not going to be interested in it, and then there's a chance that you're also going to follow in that path.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously, right, you followed in that path. Well, that's super cool. And so when you got your berms and you were so you got your berm, you raised it up, you had it in your collection, and then you said about 16 to your kind of mid 20s, 30s, you were out of the hobby, got back into it. And I feel like that's I think we've all done that at some point, or the majority of us, where we got into it very heavily as a kid and then got out of it for a little bit. And then if you come back to it, you come back with this, I don't know about you, but I came back with a laser focus on this is what I'm into.
Oh,
And
100%.
and that was so much for me. It's still so much more of a pleasurable way of keeping, right? With a
Yeah.
focused kind of mindset on where your hobby's going, and then you can hone your parameters better.
I fought that. It's funny you say that. Yes, I agree. But I fought against this. I don't know if it was the podcast and you would talk to all these different people and you were, you're sort of you're getting fired up about what they're into,
Yes.
and it makes it hard to refrain, because what I've found over my time is that I'm addicted to the chase, not necessarily having a collection that's I have this, I have that, and type of thing. I'm addicted to just finding the animal.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So I wish the one mistake I think that well, maybe it's not a mistake because I did learn a lot, but I wish I would have just stayed more focused over the years than trying to do too much, because I think you lose something in that. So I think you're onto something there. Um,
I think everybody's different, right? You see the people with vast collections and it works for them, but for me personally, right, as a
mhm.
young man keeping reptiles and such a spread out collection, it gets overwhelming. And you're right, you start to see dips, and this is me personally, right? When I was younger, you see dips in animals' health or care, and
Sure.
it's hard
Yeah.
to adjust when it's a mix match. And when you kind of have a cohesive collection, you can easily make those changes. And, that was something that you referenced earlier, talking about not having the equipment back then and kind of what you had to work with. What are some of those early cage setups, especially seeing your dad keeping him? Was he keeping him Neodesha cages, or was it something,
Oh no,
was it
we
all
built
custom made?
everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was all custom made. We built it. He would get he had this so we had a I think it was a speckled caiman, and he built this huge cage that had like this kid pool built into it. So the kid pool was like on a platform that he cut out and was sort of there within the cage, and he had a filter on it and everything. And um but what he did is he built the Indian python cage above that cage. So it was just like, it was like constantly building on top of cages, on top of cages, on top of cages. It just wherever you could find a spot, he'd build a cage. And then you think, like, what did we do for food back then? Because there wasn't Rodent Pro or Cold Blooded Cafe or anything like that. Basically, two things. We bred gerbils. That was one thing that we did. So we had all these tanks, all these gerbil setups in the back of our basement, and that was one of my jobs, was taking care of the gerbils. And then he would go to get chicks from like a local chick farm,
Yeah.
and yeah, that's basically, he would come home with these trays of just chicks and chickens. And
And it's kind of funny how over time, right, we've kind of almost doubled back to that, where
Yeah.
the more, right, we want to feeding a diverse diet
Yep.
and high quality stuff. And Yeah, that's true. It's so funny.
Yeah. And if it was a baby, like if it was a baby, like I remember in my bedroom when I got that first Burmese python, we were dealing with those. I don't know if you've ever seen them, but back in the '80s, they had these fish tanks with slate bottom. Um, they were really legit fish tanks, so you kind of had to do
Heavy as hell.
like
Yeah.
you had to like make a lid, and then you had to sort of like figure out a way to whether you used your weights from your weight bench or whatever to kind of, books or whatever to stack on top of the cage so the snake didn't get out. Um, yeah, that's how we did it back then.
It's so interesting to see some of the ingenuity of early reptile keepers and figuring out cages, and the stuff now where we look at it and we can order a cage in or order a racking system, and there's
Yeah.
so much technology there that we weren't privy to back in the day, and before my time I was told stories of guys ripping apart refrigerators to get the heating cord out of it, and that's where they got their heating elements from.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm in my garage I have a cage that was made by Tim Gebhardt from Vivid Reptiles,
Uh-huh.
that he made it all. It has a wooden dial on it that you can control the temperature through, and they made their own little plastic cages to go into them, and it's this whole thing. And then when I later got to meet him and go into his collection, he showed me what the final prototype of it was, and it was a metal rack that they had made, and it's just a thing they'd been tinkering with, which they didn't have an option to buy this thing, so they had to make it, and then over time that was the best design they came up with, and they improved on it. And I wanted one of the metal ones, but I already have this giant wood one in my garage that's just like, this has to be saved, and I guess it's
Right.
going to stick with me, And I don't need this metal one too now.
Yeah.
But it's so cool to see that early ingenuity that we don't have. I think that you see the hobby over time and it's what I think is you see ball pythons and kind of how that came in and added such a revenue to the hobby that you start to see the caging made for it as people are playing that game.
Yeah.
And, hate it or love it, I'm grateful for that.
Yeah. It's, well, here was one thing that was interesting of what he did. He kept a lot of venomous. I say we, cause I was pretty much there beside him the whole entire time, but, he kept venomous, and what he did is he made these shift boxes inside the cage, and he would use like dowels that would come out up the cage and like kind of outside the cage, so that once the snake was in the shift box, you just push the dowel down and it would close the door. So then you could go in there and work safely without, being in fear of being bitten or anything like that. So it's like less hands off. And what was really cool that he had that I wish I had, and it cost, I think it was like $50. He would have the local vet come through, and he was a reptile vet, which was super rare back then. But he would come through and he would check all my dad's snakes for like $50 a month. He'd just go through all the collection and just kind of look at it. I mean, he was kind of doing it as a favor, but that was something different. That I wish we had.
Yeah, right. You don't really hear of that now, and to think of, obviously, right, I guess there's a connection between your father and the vet to establish that.
Sure.
But also too, kind of up in that area, there's quite a few. It's a pretty reptile area, right? Up by where you grew up, and still is, where there's some pretty big names that have come out of there, and guys that were very hardcore. And so was that kind of you getting to be a part of those circles and seeing that growing up? Obviously, your dad being a part of it. How did that kind of? What was like? So often you talk to these guys and go, "Oh, hey, I was alone, and I didn't know that people were into reptiles, and then I heard about the Herp Society, and at that point, that's when it opened up for me." But for you, it was something you were around, right? And so,
yeah, I wouldn't say that it was it wasn't until I think we went to Hamburg. Like we never went to reptile shows or anything like that. What it was is like my dad knew this guy who sort of rented out space in a pet shop. And in this section, he had all these reptiles, and you would go in there, and there was another spot. There was another area that was behind a door, and like you would knock on the door or whatever, and they would come and they would let you in, and you would go in, and there would be like all this, imported crazy stuff that you wouldn't even see it at the zoo. So it wasn't like, I don't know if I was necessarily around like, people that you would, like I think of Keith McPeak, he was kind of doing his thing at that time. And, I didn't know who he was until we started going to like reptile shows, but that I didn't get into that until probably when I was coming back in the 90s.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so one of the things I messed it up. I should have said it right in the beginning, but that everybody's going to know you from is Morelia Python Radio and you doing that. And so early on, right, one of the things that so I started out listening to Reptile Radio, and I went through and listened to every episode that I could find, and then I ran out, and I'm like, well, what is there after this? And that's when I found you guys. And so kind of what was your early influence to start that, and what was that? Why'd you do it?
So at this point, like you, I discovered Reptile Radio and thought, holy shit, this is the greatest invention ever. This is the best thing ever. While I'm driving to work, I can listen to people talk about reptiles. Holy shit, this is awesome. And there really wasn't, podcasts or stuff back then like there is today. But like they talked about ball pythons, and I thought that was cool. But at the time, I was really into carpet pythons, and nobody talked about carpet pythons. I couldn't find anywhere where people, there wasn't anybody talking about them. And then just by chance, Reptile Radio had Will Bird on, and he talked about carpet pythons. And I was like, oh man, this is awesome. So then I started figuring out who the carpet python breeders were. And I started asking the guys from Reptile Radio, hey, can you get this guy on? Hey, can you get this guy on? So we started, I remember when they had Nick Mutton on for the first time. I was like, holy shit, Jason Balin, Justin Julander, all these guys that were like, who are like kinds of friends of mine now. But at the time, it was like, oh my God, I'm not worthy type of stuff. And I don't know. I just sort of, it was funny too. I asked permission to the Reptile Radio guys because I didn't want to like offend them or something. Like there could only be one reptile podcast or something. So I reached out to them and I said, hey, I had this idea. I said, I wanted to do a podcast. It's kind of like yours, but I wanted to focus on Morelia because I think they're underappreciated in the hobby. And at the time, Morelia included scrub pythons and Boland's pythons and Owen Pelly pythons. So like, to me, it was like they had everything that I wanted in one genus of snakes. So I decided that I was going to do this. Everybody told me that it wouldn't work. Everybody told me it was going to fail. How was I going to talk to people? Like how I'm going to run out of stuff to talk about within a month, blah, 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 blah. And I said, shit, man, I'm just going to do it. There's people that talk about doing things, and then there's people that do things. I want to be one of the people that do things. This is going to be my mark on the hobby to give back for the people that helped me.
Yes, sir.
And if I'm being honest, a little bit of it was I wanted to learn more about them, and nobody was doing it, So it was like the only way that I could do this is by doing it myself. So I did one episode, and I decided very quickly that I needed a co-host. So I put up an ad for it. Next thing you know, Owen reached out to me. Turned out that we lived pretty close to each other. I think he was plotting against me at the time because I was buying up every carpet python that was available. And he was like, who is this guy that's coming into my territory and taking over and all that kind of stuff? And then and here we are. What is it, 15 years later?
Keep your friends close and keep your enemies closer, exactly. Right?
Yes, exactly. Right. Yeah.
Well, that, it is so interesting. And yeah, right. I mean, think about, for me, right, that, and so the influences that you had growing up and your reptile keeping, obviously, right, that was going to be your father and that, hey, this is the way we do it. I mean, I don't know about you, but the guys that taught me, how to keep reptiles, and one of the first corn snakes and then ball pythons breeding was, you do it this way. This is the way you do it every time. No, the female has to weigh this much. This is what we do, and it was just a militant schedule of timing. And then getting to listen to reptile radio, and then you guys later on where you're listening to, you're going, okay, there's a different way. Now it's a species that I don't keep.
Right.
It's not what I this is so, but still, it's a reptile. It's a snake. It has to apply somehow. And if we're seeing positive results anecdotally in this species here, well, maybe if I apply it to the thing that I'm keeping, and the in my own mind, the changes that came over time, where you go, okay, there's other ways of keeping this. Who were some of those early influences besides maybe your father, or when you were at the point where you were on your own and kind of growing your collection? What were those influences like for you?
The first time or the second time? First time?
First time and second time.
First time was probably my dad. There was probably like 4 guys that kind of like, one guy worked at the reptile shop that we all hung out at, and the other 3 of us kind of like just hung there. And they were kind of the influence, they kind of taught me like how they do it and how they do things. My dad was more of he doesn't, I kind of get this from him. It's like, you can't necessarily put into words what you do. It's just kind of a feeling. It's like a feel that it's like when you're taking care of animals, you're just paying attention. That's probably the thing that he taught me the most.
Yeah.
Just pay attention to the snake and it'll tell you what it needs or what it wants,
Yes, sir.
And then I guess later on it was more, probably the first guy that was a huge influence on me was Luke Snell. He was a guy that was big time into IJs back in the day. He was Morelia in Wonderland, and he was like the first guy that let me come up to see his collection. He was in like North Jersey, so I would drive up there on the weekend and kind of hang out with him, and he would just take me through his collection, show me how he set stuff up. That was the one I remember we were talking, and we were talking about at the time, carpet pythons were supposed to be kept 90-degree hotspot, 80-degree ambient, this kind of thing. And he was pushing back against that because he felt that that temperature should be a little bit lower. And I noticed that like all my carpet pythons were always like pushed up against the front of the tubs, like the little ones. And when I changed that temperature, I got more even use of the hot spot and the cool spot. So, like just like things like that, just by talking with them and, having conversations with people, different ideas and ways to approach things. And so, yeah, it was him. I guess probably the next person that was a huge influence on me was probably Nick Mutton. When I started getting into like carpet python morphs for a while, he was a big influence on me. And like, he really kind of helped me, with guests and stuff like that and topics. And he was always there to come on the show. And then, now, then I met Rob Stone, and he's probably the most influential on me. And funny enough, we met through Reptile Radio because he was on Reptile Radio. He did 2-part episode. If you can find that anywhere, it's fabulous. Listen, where he talks about rhino rat snakes. And I don't know. We just hit it off from the gate, and it's been nonstop ever since. And kind of my inner circle of me and Owen and Keith and Justin and Rob and, Dustin and Phil. And there's probably about a good 12 of us that Nipper. It's like all in that inner circle. Just great, great, great people.
Yes, sir. Yeah. And that's, it's so interesting, right, to hear of that kind of culmination over time and have it all come together. And it's just, the hobby is so in depth, right?
Yeah.
There's such a range of people where you get these real hardcore keepers, right? And then for what I do, right, we get to interact with a lot of a lot of everybody, right? From the person with
Yeah.
their first time snake to the person, that's a large scale breeder. And so we get this mix and it's every day, right? It's just these different kind of people coming in and people just learning and over time, right, with the dissemination of information and your interaction with the hobby, kind of where do you see the changes from where you remember it being and where you're seeing it moving now?
Well, I think I would probably say about, I guess it was this whole time when the natural keeping started to tick up a bit. Um, it kind of coincided with my herping, started with my herping. And, when you start to herp, I don't know, you start to question um, are you keeping it right? Could you do it better? Is there ways you can improve? Are you giving it everything that the animal needs? These type of things are through your mind, at least my mind. And yeah, I don't know. I thought for a while that this was kind of a negative thing where it was kind of split in the hobby, but it seems like it's kind of like the pendulum swung back to the middle to where we're not arguing about things that, like, there's different ways of keeping and stuff like that. So I think that's pretty positive. I think the technology that's coming forward is just amazing. And I guess I just have a perspective of that, of like I said earlier, building cages out of wood.
Yes, sir.
And
Yeah.
now it's like, you can make pretty much a rainforest in your basement. Just with the lighting and that you can keep plants alive in there, and just all the different technology that's, thermostats and heating pads and branches
Yeah, it
made of
makes
PVC and all this different type of stuff. I think it's great. I think the hobby is really going in a positive way. I think specifically with the carpet python community, after Carpet Fest, we were kind of talking about this, Jason and Owen. It feels like after COVID, the carpet python community kind of fractured a little bit. And we're going to work on trying to bring that back together.
yeah.
So
Well, no, I think that what's unique, and there's different communities in it, right? And I think that, again, from right, I don't keep carpet pythons. I never have. I think they're a beautiful snake, but I just personally don't have interest in keeping them. But I appreciate other people that are passionate about what they're doing, which is kind of what you talked about, right? Where,
sure. Yeah.
of course, right, as you hear these people come in, and you hear them talk about these different things, as many of your listeners experience, where you're listening to and you're going, okay, now I'm going to look this thing up and I'm going to learn about it now,
Right.
because that passion is contagious. And but I think that the carpet python community is much, it's a different thing, right? Where you're getting to go out and you're seeing, things like Carpet Fest, right? And to have that in my backyard in Texas is amazing, right? As someone that's personally, right, I'm interested, but kind of an introvert with my reptile keeping and don't really go out there. So Carpet Fest are kind of some of my first experiences with large crowds, besides snake shows, of people that are interested in the thing I'm into. And so to have that like-minded thing and have the foresight to go, I think we need to do this. Something that I'd heard you bring up in the past was talking about kind of how there was, like, when you guys would go to shows, you'd all kind of try to stick together. And what were some of those? What were some of those early shows like for you attending? What was the first show you ever vended?
Tinley Park.
And what was that like? Right. Well, I've never attended, but I've heard the stories. Right. It's funny, right? I've never attended, but I've been listening so long. I'm familiar with it. Right.
Yeah,
Even though I've never
there
been.
there you go. Yeah, vending my first show, man. That was amazing, man. Because I guess at the time I was really into trying to be like a full-time breeder. Like I really wanted to do that. And I was younger. I didn't have as much responsibility, et cetera, et cetera. So it was probably a little easier to do it that way. But I don't know. it was I split a table with this one girl, Julie Bender. So again, this is something about the carpet pythons, right? We had this setup. We called it Carpet Row, and it was basically like there was probably about 5 or 6 of us that were all lined up at this section at Tinley. And the cool thing was is that people would say that oh, that's a stupid idea. You're going to be competing with each other, and they're right there. But this was the cool thing about the carpet python community at the time. It was kind of like ball pythons were getting a bad rap because there was a lot of like infighting about pricing and morphs, and this morph didn't improve it. All that kind of stuff that was happening. So it was kind of like a little cutthroat at the time. And in the carpet python world, we were just like, hey man, if somebody's looking at our snakes, we're happy. You know what I mean? Like if somebody's coming to the table and wants to talk to us, we're like, yeah, cool. And if we didn't have it, we just send them down to the person that did. Oh, you want an IJ? Oh yeah. Go see Luke. He's got real good ones. You want a jungle? Go see Julie. You want a tiger? Go see Justin. But and it was awesome like that. And I think it really had a great sense of community. Like we kind of worked together, and it wasn't like egos or anything like that. It was just like we're all just nerds for this snake. This type of snake we're nerds about. Can we get more people to nerd out about it too? Is basically how it was. And yeah, it was great, man. It was really great.
Yes, sir. Yeah. And what's so interesting about this, right? And just kind of conceptualize it, right? And maybe I'm wrong. I'm just kind of firing from the hip here, but it's pretty interesting when you think about, right? So, right, I really like Alterna, and I really like Trans-Pecos rat snakes. I think Trans-Pecos rat snakes are super unrepresented in the hobby. People are finding them, and they're cool, and that's awesome, right? But I didn't go out and make a platform and invest so much time in making we're just talking about Bogertophus all the time. That's what we're talking about. And and so you kind of having those early experiences and you recognizing it, and right, to me, the layman, the guy on the outside, right, kind of when I think of carpet pythons, whether you breed anything or not or what you do, I think of you, right? And so you lay this kind of groundwork down. And so, and not you, but NPR as a whole, and kind of what you guys represent, and you lay that groundwork down that this community builds up around you guys, where you were on the ground floor of it, to where you still see that camaraderie in the hobby and the passion and those key fundamental people, and that's a unique thing within any hobby, right? I imagine with RC plane guys, there's arguments about whatever they're arguing about, or guys that are into autocross or whatever. There's going to be those disagreements, but it kind of had this kumbaya mindset moving forward, and of course, right, there's going to be disputes and whatever, and you have the bumps and whatever, but you kind of being, again, as a layman, not to take credit from anyone else, but kind of fundamental in that and setting that groundwork. It's pretty,
Yeah, I guess you could look at it like that. Yeah, I don't know, man. I just love these snakes, and I just like want people to I guess I want people to have information that's ready for them. It can be very confusing. It was very confusing when I was getting into them. There's subspecies and localities and morphs and all these different things. And, when you're coming from a world where it's like ball pythons and corn snakes, well, maybe not corn snakes, but ball pythons, they're all the same. There's no crossing or mixes or anything like that. They're all the same thing. So, it gets a little crazy. And and it just seemed like at the time, and this is just my perception, it just seemed like that the people that were into the ball pythons were more into the business side of reptiles, like the going to the show and having a website and what are you going to sell it for and how are you going to promote this and all these things, which are great. You know what I mean? That's all good stuff if that's what you're into. But then there was this other group of people to where it's like, yeah, we kind of like that stuff too. We do like the market, and I like listening to the market and what's going on and who's doing what. But I also want to hear about the natural history about snakes. I want to hear about, like, what are they doing in the wild? I want to talk to the people, or want to hear from the people that are studying them in the wild or have seen them in the wild, or like, how can we apply those concepts to what we're doing? And maybe this was because I've always had to keep reptiles this way, where it's constantly evolving the way you think, because you kind of have to make it up yourself, I guess. I don't know. But when you have people that are in that same mindset, it just sort of makes for where I am happier at in the reptile hobby. Like, to me, the one thing that I did get a little taken back by is that I noticed maybe during COVID, it was that COVID times, it seemed like the animals themselves were losing the spotlight to the personalities of reptiles. And to me, that's kind of was like, I don't know. I kind of don't like that. And that's why I'm kind of weird. And this is why Owen's weird. Like, when I'm just a nerd that liked snakes and wanted to talk about them. That's how I look at it. It's no different than that. And yeah, I don't know. So, like, when people are looking at you like you're somebody important, I'm like, okay, yeah, but I'm no different than you, man. We're just both snake nerds. It's just that I talk once a week on a podcast.
Yeah. Well, no, but you got to think, right, the time you put into it and the effort, right? I think that's so interesting. Sure. Where you look at something like art, right? And this is something I've brought up a few times. And you look at something like a statue or whatever it is, and right, it's an old statue, and you think of, or the carving that this person made, and you're looking at it and you're thinking about, wow, that's amazing, the craftsmanship, and you put it in this room and you leave it there, right? And as long as you don't let it get hot or too cold or let someone push it over or rain on it, it's going to sit there. It's good. But within this hobby, within this hobby that we're into, it's a living creature. It's a living thing. So when you look at these different lines of animals that have names accompanying them, or a locality of animal that maybe doesn't have a name connected to it, but if you go back further enough, that Jimmy John grabbed it at this day at this locality, and this is where we got this, right? And how unique that is, that when you find lines of animals. A buddy of mine that was on not too long ago was telling us a story about how he was looking for a species of snake, and he wanted this, he wanted it to be a very pure, and just, this is what he wanted. He just wanted this thing. And it took him forever to find it. And then he ended up finding it, and it was in Germany, and it was from a pairing that he had done like 40 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And as he was discussing with this guy, it ended up being his animals that he established. And so when you think about the route that those animals took, right, as a young man flipping a board and grabbing it, and he found it 40 years later, and he had to import it from Germany back to the United States.
Wow, that's wild.
Right? And he had the foresight to go, hey, everybody around. So, right, just tangent off this thing. But that's the unique thing about this hobby, right? And where it's like, oh, right, I'm no different than you. And like, yeah, you're right, 100%. But you did it, to your point that you made early on, right? When everybody was like, maybe this, that, right? You did it. And there's a lot of people, maybe they have the idea, but they don't do it, right? How many people do you speak to who go, oh, this is my project, I'm going to do this, 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 and this, and and then in a year they disappear, right? And it's understandable, no judgment. Sure. I get it, stuff comes up, life changes,
right?
But then there's the guy that did it, right, and committed to the bit and ran it for as long as they could, and so right, you're like everybody else, but no, you committed to it.
Yeah, I guess that's just like a foundational belief for myself. It's kind of like, are you going to talk about it, or are you going to do it? Like, we can talk about it all day long, and that feels all well, but like, let's get it done. Like if we're
Yeah.
gonna do this, let's do it.
Well, that's the thing, right? And so that mindset set is unique, right? And that was something where I found, right, one of my early mentors was very much so like just different than what the family structure that I grew up in.
Right.
And so were there influential people like that you ran into in the hobby kind of early on that where you go, okay, this is how humans should think. This is how we move forward.
Um, I don't know. I think as I guess as I think so. Part of the problem that we had back in the day was the fact that when you're trying to convince somebody to come on, there's no point of reference of what you're asking them to do, which is why the name is Morelia Python Radio instead of Morelia Python Podcast or something like that. Because at the time, that's like I couldn't get somebody that was older than me to understand. I'm sure you've run into this.
Yes, sir. Well, less, but again, yes, sir.
Yeah, yeah, and they don't understand how it works or what they have to do, or is it on the phone? Is it that and back then, you kind of did have to do it on your phone or whatever, and you're trying to tell them not to do certain things so that the sound is just a little bit better, just a little bit better.
At least you have the confidence to say something. I just sit there and go, that's good. That's great.
Yeah. And so I don't know. I mean, as the show started to pick up and I think it started to become popular, I think I started to get people that believed in it more. Probably some of those guys, again, like somebody like Rob, who just loved the idea from the beginning. Not again, like you, not necessarily a carpet python guy. He's kind of he's a reptile guy for sure and loves it all, but like that's not what he keeps or anything like that. But again, you can take whatever you're listening to on a podcast. I think you just talked about this earlier, and you can apply it to whatever. Sometimes it's better to listen to podcasts that's not about what you're keeping, because it's going to be different perspectives.
100%. Yes.
And you're going to get a different. That's why I like listening to the colubrid CCR guys. Because I don't keep colubrids. I don't want to keep colubrids. I love seeing them in the wild, and that seeing all those snakes in the wild in the U.S. Gets me thinking like, oh, okay, I understand this. I understand that. Okay, this is how this works. Okay. And then you're out in the environment. You sort of get a feel for how the environment works. I don't know, just little things that you pick up. I guess probably if I were to say anything about who is probably most influential, it would probably be Rob, because Rob Stone would like weekly, he would call me up and he would say, the show is great. You should do this, blah, 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 blah. So like, he really helped me kind of shape it. If we made a mistake, he was really well versed in all kinds of reptile stuff, especially like history. So he would say, nah, this was this guy, or this, this is what happened, or blah, blah, blah. So he helped a lot with that, because, we didn't know nothing about nothing. We were just two guys that just really like carpet pythons. We didn't even breed at the point that we started it. So, we got a lot of shit for that too. Why are these guys doing it? Because you wouldn't.
Yes, exactly. Yes, sir. Yeah, right. And not that this was the case, but it gets fake it till you make it, right? And just run it, right? And usually it works out.
Passion alone. Well, this is how I figured. To me, I didn't really have to. And this is what I was trying to explain to everybody. Like, I didn't really have to know. Because the idea is that I'm bringing somebody on that already knows, and I'm going to ask them.
Yes. Right. Just kind of blindly, drunkenly stubble through it and just go, hey, we're going to get it figured out. Here we go. And I think that, that makes for interesting conversations. Well, wonderful. And so kind of going and something, you're talking about where, right. I think that this is something that I've ran into where, right, in the hobby for a long time. My wife married me and then got shoved into the hobby. and then kind of was like, right, just shoved down her throat, like, this is how it works. This is what we're doing. This is what's right. This is what's wrong, right?
Right.
And then we would run into scenarios where she would go, right, that person, and me too, right? I would go this way, man, this person, it's crazy. They don't know the difference between a rattlesnake and a rat snake, or
Right.
whatever it is. And you go, how do you not understand? This is crazy to me, right?
Right.
And then you start to talk to people, and you go, well, some people don't have hobbies, right? They come home, they go to work, they come home, they go to
I don't
sleep,
understand this, man.
right?
I don't
I
get
didn't
it.
understand this till someone told it to me, and I'm sat there and like, right, they're talking to me, and I'm looking like a deer in the headlights, going, what do you mean? There's not. What do? You just come? Well, I don't know. I go to my kid's soccer game. Well, that's your hobby? Like, okay, cool, right? And
Yeah.
then, and, and so, right, those are kind of eye-opening experiences to you, where you go, okay. So then, right, when you're running into the situation where the person's right calling you for help about how to get this animal to eat or that, and then they tell you, well, I have it in a critter keeper with 2 inches of water and cork bark in it, and it's a ball python, and I keep it room temperature. I don't know why it's not eating. You go, okay, well,
So
let's
many
so
things.
right, so we're okay, right, and so, but the thing is that some people just don't know what we know, right? And so something early on that you kind of mentioned, right, and you kind of grew up with this, but was having the insight of not thinking like an animal, but thinking, okay, these are the parameters, and this is what I'm trying to achieve. And
Right.
unfortunately, that the average person walking down the street doesn't have that reference point.
Right.
And
Yeah.
I think that as experienced keepers, or hobbyists, however you want to look at it, you we forget that sometimes, right? So then when we see the person post online going, hey, I just got my first X, and here it is set up on whatever it is,
Yeah.
you get that also person that's been doing it for 2 years, right? And
Uh-huh.
they've learned a lot in those 2 years because of the information that's there. And they jump down this person's throat. And unfortunately, I don't think that makes it doesn't help people. And we need to kind of always keep that mindset that what's normal to us isn't. Some people come home and they don't water snakes. They stare
It's
at the wall.
yeah. Yeah. It's funny you bring this up. This is sort of something that we were talking about the other. Well, number one, you're right. I've met some people that I work with that don't have any kind of hobbies, and I'm like, I have like 12. I can give you a couple if you want. Like, what are you doing? Like, like
Yeah.
I don't know. So I don't understand that. But we were having a conversation with, how do you welcome new people into a hobby, uh, teach them about the hobby without coming across as elitist. I think of like when it comes to carpet pythons, it's kind of, is it pure? That was a big thing for a while. And, somebody would post up the snake they got at a show, and immediately it would be like, oh, that's not a pure diamond. You got ripped off. Blah, 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 blah. And like, how's that person supposed to feel? Like, I don't know. My first carpet was a mixed carpet. So I think that was the one thing that I wish that we would just be a little bit better at, um, bringing new people into, because you constantly want to bring new people in, and you don't want them to feel like, that's kind of like, where things like Carpet Fest come into play,
Yes.
because now you're not at a show. The vendor no longer has to worry about animals or talking to somebody to get a sale or something like that. And you can start to talk to everybody. I mean, we saw it this past weekend. You had people like Casey Lasik that was there, and then you had new people that were there. So you got the in the entire spectrum of people, and you know, I I want those people that are coming in are excited and fired up. I want them to be as welcomed and feel as welcomed. You know, as I did when I came into it. It's kind of like they kind of like wait a little bit, the Morelia carpet python world, whatever you want to call it. Kind of like, all right, let's wait to see how this one shakes out, and then but once you're in, you're in. But
Yeah.
I just wish that it was a little more forgiving to new people, because that's a great point that people don't know. This just comes natural. It's kind of like, I don't know.
You
It's
don't
like
know what
playing,
you don't know.
yeah, it's kind of like playing guitar. I pick it up, I play it. What are you doing? I don't know. I just playing it. Like, what is that? I don't know. I'm just kind of hitting things until it does what I want it to do.
Yeah.
So like my brain works that way, and I guess other people
Exactly.
don't.
Right. And so, and right, it's kind of, this is going to take a weird turn. So it's kind of like the old Buddhist teaching, right? Where the ideas were like, not everybody's mind is awake, right? And some people's minds are meant to sleep, right? And the idea of waking that person up, they couldn't handle it. And so, right, I'm no better than anybody else. I'm equal to everybody else. But their mind might not just work, right? So, right, I got into reptiles, and then you get into dietary stuff, and then you get into right, then you get into isopods, and then you go, wow, these isopods are, well, I'm going to learn about dirt, and then you start to learn about dirt, and then you go, well, if I know this much about dirt, I'm going to start gardening. And then you go, okay, cool, I'm trying to get into gardening, and well, look at the genetics of this plant, and okay, if this works like this with snakes, maybe it works like this with plants. And then you start growing your garden, and then you're out there like a jackass, jacking off flowers and then putting into other flowers and going, oh, well, I'm trying to cross this plant with this plant. And then you go, well, hey, the wasps, well, that's what helps with caterpillars. And so now I'm growing wasps around my house. And right. And it's just like, well, I just tried to grow some isopods, or I just tried to plant a seed. And most people go, right, Google, how do I do this? And the first article, right, that Google throws up because it has the most amount of views, or right, it's a this person or that person going, this is how you keep whatever, and that and that person's going, right, keep them in 2 inches of water with cork bark,
right,
and and well, that's what people are going to see, and they go, oh, okay, there you go, that's what you do. And they're not interested. They got other stuff going on, and they have other stuff going on, right? So whatever that person's thinking about, I can't conceptualize it. It's off over there.
Yeah.
But for me, what I'm thinking about, I'm going, well, what's that snake thinking? I wonder. Yeah. Right. And so it's just, I've been doing it for forever, so that's how I think.
Right.
And so how do we, to your point, how do we get those people and invite them in there? And I think we forget it, right? We're lucky enough to be in circles of people that think like we think, and are having those where, it's a lot of people that I know that think that way. And so now it seems even more normal to me, but it's really not.
Right. Yeah.
But it is getting more normal, right? I think that when we think about reptile keeping over time and how it's going, you see more people keeping those animals, and the hobby moving forward, kind of from where you started to where you see it moving. What are some of the changes that you've noticed?
I think it's going full circle back to the days that I remember. I think in my days, it was more about keeping a species than breeding anything, or, you didn't even think about breeding. Like, that was something that was just like, oh man, like, let's just make sure that the snake survives before we even go and try to go to the, it didn't even come into play. And most of the time, to secure a pair of something was next to impossible. It wasn't like today where you could go and do that. So like the focus was on the keeping and figuring out how to keep these things alive. And then the morphs came into play, and obviously when money's involved, things progress relatively quickly, and racks came into play. You know what I mean? And then you started to just see how everything was changing, and I think that in a way, I think the reptile hobby kind of didn't. I think ball pythons get a bad rap because a lot of the stuff, the technology and the things that we use today wouldn't be here if those people weren't working with that species, you know.
Well,
I don't
100%.
Yeah, so
And
I
here's
yeah,
sorry,
go
no,
ahead. No, no,
here's
no, go ahead.
something that I didn't realize till getting to speak to some of these guys that were way before me in keeping, and they were going, hey, at a point when we were keeping king snakes and all these U.S. native species, people were coming to our early proto snake shows and going, "Oh, I wish there was ball pythons and leopard geckos here. This is what I want to see.
Yeah.
Where are those things?"
Yes.
And so those guys got pushed out, and well, people didn't want to buy what they had, and so then the things that the customers were asking for, and the public were coming in and going, "This," and not the public, us, the hobbyists, what they were
Yeah.
interested in. They were seeing what they were seeing in the magazines that pushed those guys out. But the original kind of American, the small sample size of dudes that I've spoken to that were there at those early shows, well, that's what they were doing was the native species, and people didn't want to see that.
Yeah.
And so then it tangents off into this thing, and but it's just the ebb and flow. As someone that's been in the pet trade for longer than I wish I'd, it's been a long time. You see it ebb and flow and ebb and flow. You know, where, hey, okay, last year people were into tarantulas, and then we had these slings for forever and grew them up to almost mature animals, and now we can't keep them in the door and slings are selling. Well, it took 4 years, but a movie came out with a, you know, cute tarantula with a birthday hat, and everybody loved it, you know, and that's how the hobby works at the lowest level, you know?
Yeah, it's that's interesting. You know, I think this was why what I've learned and what I wish I would have done is just stay where I don't try to adapt to the market. Like don't try to chase the trend. Make the trend. You know, like, you know, you're either going to be the person that's leading the charge or you're not. And like it's, you look at, even if you look at ball pythons, just look at somebody like Justin Kobelka. Like, he's kind of leading the charge. Everybody's following behind him. He's so far ahead of everybody else that they can't even keep up. So anything that he puts out, you know, it's like, oh, look at this. I don't even know what is it, Pompeii or whatever. Crazy looking snake. And it's, you know, it's got clown and this and that. And then everybody's rushing out to get these clowns and all. You know, he's making his own market. You know, and if I think that's the thing that I kind of like pushed me away from ball pythons when I was getting into it, because it just didn't seem like the people that were into them cared about how the snake works. They cared about the hobby part of it, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just not what I was into. I'm the snake nerd. I want to know, you know, how this thing works. I want to know what's you know, I think Vin Russo said this one time. It's like, yeah, the car has a beautiful paint job, but I want to know how the engine works. Like, that's what I'm into, you know. It's like, and that was perfectly put. And now I see the hobby swinging back to, I get real happy when I see somebody keeping like 10 snakes in a room that the caging is, you know, just, it looks like you're walking into a jungle. Like, to me, that's just so awesome that, number one, that you have that self-discipline just to keep 10 snakes, because that's really hard, you know. And number two, you know, the artistic, that artistic touch that just, you know, I don't know. When I see that, I say, wow, that person really likes nature in general. Like, to me, that's kind of like, you know, how, I guess if you're going to look at it outwardly, yeah, I'm just fascinated by nature. It just so happens that snakes are one of those things that really fascinate me. But what you were saying earlier, it's like, I was so relating to it. It's like, oh, well, you know, I'm sitting there going, well, if I'm going to plant enclosures, I'm going to have, what kind of plants are in Australia? And, you know, and it's like, oh, wow, look at this. This is pothos that's in Australia. Can you get that here? Oh, yeah, you can. Well, let me see if I can get that. Oh, let me see if I can take care of this. And then you're trying to take care of it. And then you're like, well, you know what would look good with these plants? This plant. And then next thing you know, like, how did I get into plants? Like, what?
Yeah.
Like, what happened here? You know, so I have all these plants now, which is a whole nother thing, you know?
Yes,
and,
yes.
But I can so relate to that. But yeah, I think the hobby is turning into a spot where I think people are just doing what makes them happy and stop worrying about what everybody else is doing. I think the hobby would be a lot better off. Like you're saying, you're into Alterna and you're into the
Trans-Pecos rat snake.
Trans-Pecos rat snakes. 2 awesome species. Haven't seen them in the wild. Tried many times, and they've burnt me every time. I will continue to look for those snakes, even though, like you're saying about carpets, I'm probably never going to keep them. Although, rat snakes would be one, I think, that's probably in the same niche as carpet pythons would be. So I would probably be in that, if I was to keep a colubrid, that would kind of be where I would go. The other thing.
I mean, what a cool snake, right?
Yeah.
Not to stop you, but yes,
yeah, heck yeah, man.
Don't get us going on Subbok. I'll keep
hours
talking.
and hours and hours looking for that snake, and I couldn't find it.
You've not found a Subbok in the wild?
No.
Dude, come on. No. Okay,
No,
well, let me know next time
right?
you're in Texas. We'll go find you some Subbok.
Okay.
I'll put you on a Subbok.
Yeah. All right. That sounds great. But yeah, I don't know. So I kind of think the hobby's kind of going in. I think it's going in a good direction.
Yes, sir. Well, something that was very influential, and I don't remember where I heard this, and I don't know if it was on Reptile Radio or if it was on NPR, and I remember nothing about it, but it had to be one of those formats where I heard someone talking about importing snakes in the United States, or importing snakes early on. Mm-hmm. And they were talking about the different market, and I'm paraphrasing this. This is like it could have been a dream I had. I don't know if this is reality, but I remember this as something I listened to, and it didn't come from anyone in my circle.
Okay.
But they were talking about the different markets, and that Japan wanted the most unique, wild, crazy looking animal, and Europe wanted the healthiest animal. It didn't matter how it looked. And yes. America didn't give, and I'm paraphrasing, didn't give a shit. They just wanted it. And so get it to them in whatever, right? Paraphrasing.
Yeah. Yes.
Who was that and where was that from? Because that has been such an influential so my wife is from the UK. I got to travel to the UK. And whenever I traveled, whether it's in the United States or whatever, because I came from a pet shop world, that was, I would go to pet shops wherever I was and seek them out, and would go to places to go to the pet shop there, even if it was like their equivalent of a Petco, just to walk around.
Sure. Yeah.
And so, while not an early influence, but a mid kind of influence, was going to Europe and walking in there and seeing all these different types of feeder insects, and the way that they were keeping their displays at pet shops there was like, oh, okay. This is a European way of keeping to me. And I came back to the United States and I went, I think that we need grasshoppers. Yeah. And so I started looking into it. And at the time when I came back, it was illegal to transport grasshoppers across state lines. And so I moved on and whatever, went back to life, right? And then now later on to see these guys breeding grasshoppers and these different species of feeders, I think it's awesome, right? But not to tangent off on that. Yeah. But you see those influences. Now, that's where I look at it, right? When you're saying, I'm seeing the hobby kind of change. What I'm seeing is a European style of keeping coming to the United States, where you're seeing the people keep the obscure animals with 10 animals in a room, but an amazing setup. I'm seeing that too, and I agree.
Yeah, I think that's you made a good point. I kind of make points sometimes without like thinking about it totally. But yeah, the European way of keeping snakes, Nipper is a huge influence on me when it comes to that, and his big thing is just enjoying it, and sort of like I had this thing, on NPR probably maybe 5 years ago. Maybe it was 7 years ago. I don't know. I wanted to do that, get as many python species as you can and have all these different and this is sort of like where I didn't stay true to my roots and what made me happy, and was trying to chase a trend, so to speak. Not that I didn't. I love pythons. They're my favorite type of snake. But, I wanted everything to sort of, Owen said this best. He's like, he'll get the snake and he'll keep it and he'll say, it's not like a carpet python. And then he says to me every time, why do you keep getting snakes thinking they're going to be carpet pythons? Why don't you just keep carpet pythons? Like, why are you trying to make something, else? And it's just like, I'm just, that's a good point, Owen. I don't know. I don't know why I keep doing it, because I was addicted to that chase. And I just felt that, like, sometimes, I don't know if you feel this way, but sometimes if, probably going back to the early days, it's like, why are you doing this or whatever? I kind of felt like I had an obligation to kind of do that stuff so I could kind of talk about other species and stuff like that. But like, no, I'm quite content just being the carpet python guy. Owen can handle all that other stuff. Like, he can talk about his experiences with all that other stuff. I'm quite happy just being the carpet python guy. So I guess my advice to people would be, what I've learned is, like, yeah, it's okay to try new things, but just be honest with it, and, like, be honest with yourself, and, like, what are you doing this for? Like, why do you get enjoyment out of keeping a snake in a box? And then trying to figure out, like, what that is and how you can make it the best thing. When I had 400 plus snakes, that was stressful, man. Like, it wasn't fun at all. And I wasn't learning anything from my snakes. And I was just in this, like, time to feed, time to clean, time to water bowl change, and it's just like this. There was no appreciation for it. And when I started keeping diamond pythons, I keep them more naturalistic from the gate, even when they were younger, because I think they need that hot spot because they're basking in the sun. Anyway, I started to watch their behaviors, and, like, they would come out before, like, how did they know when to come out? Like, how do they know that? Like, what makes them say, okay, the light's going to go on in about 15 minutes. I'm coming to get underneath that light. And my lights go on and off throughout the day. So how do they know to come back at the time? Like, how do they know that? And, just like that little observation of, what they were doing and where they were at and what time it was. And, did it change if they ate a meal? Did it change after they just, just like things like that? I would just sit there and drink, like, a cup of coffee and just watch them. And I was like, well, I can't do this with my other snakes because I can't see them, So that's when I started to change my mindset of keeping things in cages so you can see them and observe them, and having less, but having better situation for the animals that you have.
Yes, sir. Yeah. And that's, I feel like that was something where we're incubating eggs, right? When I was thinking about it, where, I went out and I started finding myself when I got into field herping, right? And it was kind of, it correlated to it where you go, okay, now I'm reaching my hand in the cut to feel what the sand feels like, and going, well, okay, is this maybe what they're putting their eggs in? And this is a story that I just brought up, but again, it's one of the things when you're thinking about it, everything you're doing goes back to what different hobbies or different interests, right? And so, right, I was hibernating snakes in my garage, and I would go out there on, check on them, but especially on very extreme nights where there was cold or hot, I would go out and check on those animals. And I would notice on some of the swings on the high and low that you would see animals sat in the water bowls. And I remember thinking, that's crazy. You wouldn't see me in water for whatever reason, right, at this time. Right. But then you go, okay, this animal their infrastructure is completely different than mine. It doesn't apply, but I don't know. And just move on with my day, right? And then years later, right, career changes, just in the medical field, and I'm looking at a freezer where you're pulling donor tissue in and out of, and you see a probe for the refrigerator sat in a vial of water. And you go, all right. And, well, there's an engineer that they pay a lot of money. Hey, man, why is the vial, why is there a vial of water in the probe? And they say, well, because we open these refrigerators, and if you check the air temperature, it wouldn't be representative of the tissue that is in the refrigerator, and so the water adds of viscosity and controlling the temperature that is more representative of what the tissue is going to experience. And then you're listening to the guy and you hear like, right, peanuts,
Like,
wah, 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 and you're going, that's why they're getting in their water bowls, because they're trying to maintain a temperature. And I'm like, oh, okay, cool, man, right? And then I go, okay. And then you go, well, I'm going to keep my snakes in wine coolers now instead of putting them in the garage, because they're looking for a consistent temperature. Now, right, as time's gone on, I go, well, if you look at hibernation, brumation, whatever you want to call it, there's probably movement in those animals, and it's not, right? They've been here for a very long time. Right. And so we can do our best to attempt to me, I think that a cooling period is important. And again, a colubrid centric, that might not apply for pythons, boa, the individual species, your individual animal might not apply. But within my collection, for what I keep, I think that getting those animals cold consistently is the best I can do. But you're going to try. Now, how do we, right? In 10 years, is there going to be a thing where we go, oh, dude, this is how you cool these animals, and this is the right way to do it, Right. It's so interesting where it's like, that's wild, man. I thought I was at the peak, and I didn't know anything.
Yeah, right? It just resets all, yeah. It's that's interesting you say about the snake in the water bowl. It reminds me, again, nothing to do with carpet pythons, but this past summer, we went out and we looked for eastern Massasaugas in Pennsylvania. Super rare, hard to find, very small pocket of them. So we're talking, long story short, we ended up meeting up with this herpetology class. So we kind of like bummed along with them. We talked to the warden, and he let us come along with them, and it was really cool. But the one thing I learned is that, like, when they go down and they go to hibernate, they go down and they're in the water. They're in the water because the temperature is steady, which is wild to me. That's wild that they're like underground. So they go into like crayfish burrows is where they kind of live. And during the winter, they go down. That's kind of where they hibernate, which I was blown away by that.
Right. And that's one of those things where you look at it and you go, okay, right, I'm just a jackass trying to learn the best I can and do the best I can. And then you hear something where you go, okay, here's another species, right, that has, right, some range. And you go, oh, okay. So maybe my dumbass idea that I've been going, oh, this is it. Right. Maybe there's some validity to that, right. And it's so interesting. And that's the best part about, just getting to talk to different people and getting to throw that out where other people get to enjoy the conversations as well and apply it to what they're doing.
Yeah. I think in the early days, a lot of people took to Owen and me because, number one, we were really the only people. And there would come and go, but we were the main. There was like another one and another podcast, but like people would listen to us, and I would hear that comment a lot. I don't have carpet pythons, but I love listening to you guys. And I think it's just people. If you have a chemistry with people or a person, and it works, then people are going to enjoy listening to you. Like, your voice is great for podcasting. You have the perfect voice for podcasting. I think of my voice and the terrible Philly accent and everything, and it's just but it is what it is, But I think that I think that if you're excited about something, people, and they're into, just reptiles in general, they're going to get into, they're going to at least appreciate what you're doing,
Yes, sir. Yeah. Well, and I think that's, when you think about something that we talked about, and maybe I know that, right, being honest with myself, that you go deep down, right, we're all a finite being, and the idea of leaving something behind where you go, this is what I did, right?
Yeah.
If that when I croak, if there's a this line animal,
Yeah.
Well, I did way better than I thought I was going to do. Right? Like, hell yeah.
Right.
And there's that when you think about it, right? And you have enough nights where you sat there going, whoa, why am I here? That
Yeah.
you go, some justification, and maybe some of us, right, like myself, you find it in maybe what the living art could be of reptiles, and it goes so much deeper than this thing that it is, right? And that's the beautiful part about the hobby. You can look at it in so many levels.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. But yeah, I think at the end of the day, the thing that I love about the hobby, my closest friends, except for one, are all from the reptile hobby. You know, um, and that I've developed these relationships over the past 10, 15 years have all
Yes, sir.
been from doing the show or Carpet Fest or whatever, and going on herp trips. Man, you'll learn real quick who you who you get along with if you on a herp trip.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, just that alone take out, and it's funny, right? I used to hear this talking to people would be like, oh, yeah, we talk snakes, and I'm thinking like, how could these two people not be together? And like, how could Nick Ryan and Ryan Young, or did I say Nick Ryan and Nick Mutton and Ryan Young get together and not talk snakes 24/7? But then you start to realize that you have other hobbies and things that that you share, that you're into, and then you start to get to know them as a person, and yeah, man, that's a great thing, and then it become like party family,
Yeah. Yeah.
but it's a good thing.
Yes, sir. Well, excellent. I feel like me and you could talk for another 3 hours and keep
Yeah.
it moving, but I think we'll call it here from tonight. And when I'm editing this, I'm going to go, "Oh, I should have followed this, and I'm such a dumbass."
No
And
worries.
so hopefully again in the future, maybe we get to run this back, and I'll make
Yeah.
notes while I edit. And if you think of anything, we'll run this back in the future. And thank you again so much for your time and the work that you guys have put in, and how you've influenced the hobby as a whole. Not to be that little fangirl on the side, but thank you very much, because you changed my mindset, and the guests you brought on, it was influential in my keeping, and I think the overall care of animals throughout the world. So thank you for that dedication, and thank you for the ones that can't say thank you.
Thanks, man. Appreciate that. Really do.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Well, thank you for your time.
All right.
Let me zoom out on you here. Okay, you got a message for the time capsule?
Yeah, and it's simply this. My prediction for you is that even though you'll forget all about this in some way consciously, next summer at about this time, you'll remember to return.